Wuthering Heights is the movie of the moment. People love it and hate it, and there doesn't seem to be much in between. The Australian's got a new chief film critic, Nikki Gemmell, and she announced herself in the role with a pretty startling review.
Wuthering Heights. Oh my goodness. 5 stars.
Bianca Farmarcus is the Australian's content director of culture, and Bianca, it's safe to say Nikki loved this movie.
Yes, she absolutely loved the film. I think it's one of the most exciting reviews I've read of Wuthering Heights, and our audience loved either agreeing with her or getting into a debate, which this film seems to be sparking a lot of.
I watched the 1939 Wuthering Heights, Laurence Olivier, Merle Oberon, with my heart. I watched the very dour, overly earnest 2011 Andrea Arnold version with my head. I watched this one with my groin.
Bianca, you got Nikki and a few of our other experts, Geordie Gray and Melinda Rout, into the State Theatre to have a deep dive into who loved Wuthering Heights and who hated it.
Let me just start by saying I don't think Wuthering Heights is necessarily a bad movie. I would say it's the worst film I've ever seen. Now, I know I'm surrounded by fans here, and I would just like to kick off this conversation by saying, what was it that you actually enjoyed?
For me, it's about women being audacious and breaking through with boldness and daring, just as Emily Brontë did in 1846, 1847. Emerald Fennell has seized the IP, the original product, and made something electric and alive and damn sexy.
Bianca, we're going to look at what some other people thought of this movie, but I need to know more about why you hated it. Why did you hate this movie so much?
Personally, I'm shocked I was the only one in that group that didn't like it at all. I think it's 3 things. Firstly, all style, no substance. Secondly, and I really hope I'm not deported for this one, but Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi cannot act together. They were hopeless. Thirdly would be the positioning of this film as a great love story, which has caused a lot of drama for a lot of different reasons. People are upset that it deviated so much from the original text. People are upset that it kind of ignores the whole domestic violence element to it. My main gripe was that if you're going to position something as a love story, you need to get actors with the slightest bit of chemistry, and kind of the symbolism used was just the most lazy and boring kind of hints at subtle sexuality I think I've ever had the misfortune of watching for 2.5 hours of my life. I cannot tell you how much I hated this movie.
I really don't want to see it because I, as a devoted Jane Austen fan, find the Brontë sisters and their gothic running around on the moors, kind of ripping your clothes off and crying novels really tedious. I also found really tedious Saltburn, which is the movie that everyone loves by Emerald Fennell. Did you like Saltburn?
I found Saltburn fine. I mean, I personally thought it was a poor man's Tom Ripley and kind of just focused more on the depravity than anything else. It had interesting bits, and I think visually she is an impeccable filmmaker, and I think culturally she is one of the most interesting filmmakers of our time and really shows like kind of this new generational shift of how we're watching films. My personal favorite was her debut, Promising Young Woman. The substance, the nuance of it, every single element of that film was just a work of art. I don't know what's happened since. I think for anyone wanting to know whether they should see Wuthering Heights or not, I'd say read a Vogue, drop a carton of eggs on the floor, and look at someone you find attractive from a distance and think about what it would be like to be with them for 5 minutes. You pretty much just saved yourself 2.5 hours in 10 minutes. That's what you get.
Throw a bucket of cold water over yourself and pretend you're on the Yorkshire moors. Let's read a review by The Independent's Clarice Lowry. She gave it 1 star. She said, adaptation or not, it's an astonishingly hollow work. Some of this, it can be argued, was already signalled by the film's casting and the choice to obliterate any mention of race, colonialism or ostracisation in the telling of pseudo-siblings Cathy and Heathcliff's destructive codependence. Heathcliff, whose ethnically ambiguous appearance is of great concern to every other character in the book, is played by white Australian actor Jacob Elordi. Now, this has been a thread of the commentary about Jacob Elordi's performance, whether you liked it or not. There's a critique that he's too white, basically. I think that might be a little bit unfair. I mean, yes, he is not a gypsy, as Heathcliff is described in the original text. But he's also not blonde with blue eyes.
I think people getting hung up on the fact that it's not directly a representation of the book are missing the point that Emerald Fennell intentionally put it in inverted commas. We know it's Wuthering Heights in her interpretation. And I also just think it sort of rescinds the ability to kind of move on from the text. Like, there are versions of the book that's turned into a film that is very loyal to that. And I think it's important, but I also don't know why that's become such a sticking point when there's plenty of other things to hate about this movie.
There are certainly ways to adapt iconic novels without being faithful to the text. Clueless is a great example of that, the 1990s movie that's an adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma. It managed to be funny and incisive and different, but it didn't get itself into the same jam that Emerald Fennell's now in. I mean, maybe inverted commas are not enough to distance you from the original text.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my personal favourite's 10 Things I Hate About You, The Taming of the Shrew, but I guess what those achieved was taking it completely out of the world that it was set in, whereas Emerald Fennell kind of does this sort of lazy flirtation with it and then just completely ignores everything else. So it's a balance of which parts that she ignored that you really take an issue with.
Now, Emerald Fennell is a millennial, but only just. She's 40 years old.
Yes.
She's getting much closer to my end of the spectrum than to yours. But there's a lot of talk about how she's, reinventing cinema for a new generation and she's making this relevant for young women. You're a young woman. Why did that not connect with you?
I think where it was lost for me was sort of the divorce in the message. There was just nothing of how it was marketed ended up on screen, other than the fact that it was beautiful to look at. I think it had absolutely nothing to really hook into, and I think this one was kind of a failure in ways to make a film for young people, because it did have those sexy celebrities, that incredible marketing campaign, editing that makes the whole thing kind of look like a TikTok at the end of the day, but really nothing to sort of take beyond the 30 seconds that were interesting and may have stood out past that point. And I think that's where it really failed for me. It just felt really shallow and hollow and overtly reliant on things that appeal to young people, rather than in the past where she's genuinely made films that really connect to younger audiences.
The New Yorker's Justin Chang wrote this in his review. The actors generate sparks of passion, but no deeper air of tragic or romantic inevitability, no sense of a bond forged between souls, and only a smidgen of the corrosive rage that makes Wuthering Heights as much of a hate story as it is a love story. You hated it, obviously. You're bringing the hate. What about the sex? Was it sexy?
Not really. I just didn't believe it. I think a lot of the implied sexual references were just so dull, and I think people that absolutely love that have forgotten that it's been done a million times before. I think it was just lazy. It was like, let's rely on two attractive people to sell a sex scene. It's like, well, they have to actually do something, and it can't just be random staring across the yard, sticking your fingers into a fish. Also, the thing that I find quite interesting about this is she didn't change the historical context of it, right? This is in the 18th century, a pre-refrigeration period, might I add. So the idea that everyone's getting off by smashed dairy and rotting fish is just ridiculous to me.
What was the thing about the eggs? What happens with the eggs? Please, you've got to tell me.
These eggs.
Everyone's talking about eggs.
These eggs in this economy, that's what bothers me the most about this film. It's just, it's a symbol that Heathcliff keeps leaving her smashed eggs in her bed, on the floor. There's eggs smashing everywhere. And apparently no one in this village is starving because they just get to smash eggs all the time.
The eggs could be about fertility, about sort of smashing her fertility. They could be about, bodily fluids.
Honestly. And I'm meant to believe that that's sexy. Really? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love an implied sort of sexual reference in everything. I think it is very appealing, and it does kind of, particularly for women, tap into that whole thing of like, we want to think about it rather than just see full-on sex scenes. But also, it just did nothing for me. I just cannot fathom that these two people had any chemistry whatsoever. It's like confirms my firm belief that there should always be one ugly person in a relationship, because then you know they've got something else driving you there to stay with them. These are two gorgeous and, might I add, very talented actors that should never again be in a film together.
They've taken the chemistry, although fortunately not the eggs, to the red carpet as well. Every time I see them on a red carpet, they're kind of all over each other. They're posting social media videos with matching rings. That is sort of breaking the fourth wall in a quite odd way. I mean, are we meant to believe that Margot and Jacob are actually obsessed with each other in real life?
Yeah, I think this is a masterclass in marketing, because they clearly did all these things just to build the hype around it, which does not follow through. And I think maybe it was a bit of reverse engineering as well, because, as I've said possibly too many times, I truly think there was zero chemistry and no spark and no kind of that external longing or deep devotion or just irrevocable romance that it was built up to be. And now we have things like Jacob Elordi wearing his silver tooth with the initials of the characters engraved on it, and I'm meant to believe that translates on screen. Like, it's just a marketing ploy, and it's a very good one, but it doesn't do anything for the film other than build hype around it and then spurn 1,000 think pieces talking about how bad it was.
The Guardian's Rhiannon Lucy Cosslett also had a go at the movie. Can you read out some of what Rhiannon had to say?
For all its attempts to be shocking, Fennell's film has stripped away all that is radical about Wuthering Heights, and even aesthetically, her attempt to out-weird a Brontë falls flat, feeling to me like a 2 hours, 16-minute long perfume advertisement for watered-down ode to Tim Burton. The novel's stranger, more gothic aspects, the ghost, the digging up of Cathy's grave, the products of the mind of a young writer whose life had been tragically marred by consumption, were also abandoned.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've always struggled with the Brontë sisters' writing, is that there was a lot of consumption. They were living in a parsonage where everyone was dying, sort of one after the other. They had a crazy brother. But they didn't actually have experience of romantic or sexual relationships. This is a sort of stay-at-home virgin's version of what Gothic romance is like. It feels very sort of naive and just pure fantasy to me.
I also think this brings up one of the most important points, which is that this is a Gothic tale. In the first 5 minutes, you kind of get that. It really paints it out to be sort of not entirely faithful to the original text, but really draw on that sort of misery that they were experiencing, that there were these huge, unbelievable sorts of pain running through the sisters' writing, and then bang, that you never see it again.
Is it going to win any awards? Is this an Oscar-worthy film, do you think?
I think it's a Razzie-worthy film.
But you're not on the judging panel.
No, I know. Not yet, but look, I think there are definitely accolades to be paid for the costuming and the set design. It is unbelievable, and I think the intricacy of that was absolutely incredible. Yeah, I'm going to give it a solid no for the Oscars. Also makes sense for why they released in February, because they completely missed the season, and they will most certainly not be making it the next year.
Bianca Farmarkis, I think you've made up my mind. I'm not going to see it, and I'm really happy about that.
Wait till streaming.